crack here is very difficult to see.
Falls right along the radius of the bolt. They will fail. It's 100% failure on the M3s, and we even see them on the 330s.
The E46 M3 might be the best M3. While it's not the most powerful or the lightest, it's generally seen as the perfect driver's car. It does, however, have one fatal flaw, and that is the 100% failure rate on the rear subframe mounting points. I've come down to Wile Motorsport in Walpole, Massachusetts to show you exactly what it takes to inspect for cracks, to correct the cracks, and what it looks like when the floor completely fails. If you already own an E46 or you're planning on buying an E46, it's critical that you understand exactly what to look for and if it's gone too far, because the cost of replacing a floor versus reinforcing a floor could mean your car is totaled. The car we're looking at today is in excellent condition, but it still has minor cracks on the floor. With a PPI or pre-purchase inspection, you'd probably be able to see some of these cracks, but without removing the subframe, not all are visible to the naked eye.
So Evan, one of the big things that everyone knows about E46 M3 is before they buy them, they should be doing inspections on the rear subframe. So why? What is the problem here?
What you need to do is, if you're going to buy an E46, is get it on a lift, 100%. What you're going to look for, especially in the rear, is subframe mounting cracks. They like to crack on the front right, and it's very difficult to see. There's a crack there. And then they like to also crack right here. They'll crack, you'll just see a crack running up along this seam here. There isn't one on this car, but they'll crack right here. The other places they like to crack is along this pinch weld right here. There'll be pop spot welds, which there's one right there. Pop spot weld here, and there'll be a hairline crack right here. And they always crack in the same spots. If you don't do it, your rear floor will fall out of the car.
So what's the fix?
Well, we'll fix all the cracks and the broken spot welds. We'll weld them up, and then we'll install the Bimmer World subframe reinforcement kit. They will fail. It's 100% failure on the M3s, and we even see them on the 330s.
What level of cracking is acceptable? Like if you were buying a car, are you looking to have a no crack car?
No, I mean, if you're gonna buy a car and there's cracks on it, that's fine, as long as you get it fixed within a reasonable amount of time.
Is there such thing as too far gone?
You're asking a person who's replaced 2 floors. So, I mean, it's fixable, it's all fixable. It just, you know, how much more money do you wanna invest into the car to get it fixed? I can get this done in 2 days, where it takes me almost a full week to do a floor.
As you can see, it can be very difficult to detect these cracks while everything is still in place, which is why it's a great idea to have an experienced mechanic look at a car before you bring it home to make sure that you're only in for about a $2,000 job versus a $10,000 floor replacement.
That's the crack.
Once we have this subframe out, I'll show you exactly where to look for common crack locations. But right now, it's time to drop the subframe. That means removing a lot of plastic and hardware from underneath your car.
Nothing's worse than getting the subframe ready to drop and you forget to undo the e-brake cables.
That goes double for brake lines.
And it's probably my favorite part about the job.
Try to keep it all organized because it's a lot to go back together when you're done with the job. And Evan has a few useful tips for you along the way.
These are wheel speed sensors.
Oh, I've had those fail on me.
Oh yeah, well, if you don't take these out, then you rip them out and you're in for a day of wiring. This side has your brake pad sensor and your wheel speed sensor.
The more secrets you give away, the more people are like less inclined to do this themselves. They're like, oh, Jesus Christ. No.
Fuck that. To save yourself some grief later on, you want to mark the trailing arms so your alignment is at least somewhat close to your starting point, so you're not screwing around trying to get the alignment close again. It'll save you a little bit of time doing your alignments again. This drive shaft has a lot of goopy grease on it, and to keep yourself from getting covered in it, just slap.
Top tip.
A rubber glove, I do too, to make sure she don't break.
I thought 2 created more friction, and then it's more likely to break.
Yikes. What you disconnecting?
I'm disconnecting something that I often forget to disconnect,
What's
which
that?
is the headlight level sensor on the back.
Now that the subframe's out and the floor is exposed, let's take a detailed look at exactly where these floors typically crack and which cracks we're going to need to repair on this car.
So we have a crack here,
Just a little guy.
which is typical. And they'll also crack like around here on the stud itself. And then I'll also do the same here. Typically you'll have a half moon shaped crack right underneath this. Sometimes they'll crack up this way a lot more. Another crack that runs like this. And it can go fairly high. It can go up to like here. And then it'll start to branch out this way. And then you'll start popping this spot weld here. There's a seam right here. You can't see because it's under the undercoating. But that will crack and you'll see a line. And it'll actually start to separate this pinch weld along here. And then you'll end up cracking spot welds around here and here. And also here. And that's like on the worst things that we've seen.
And this one we seem to be pretty lucky because you've only got this one crack.
One crack right here.
Right here. So this is stuff that would be really difficult to actually see with the car fully assembled, put together, and you're really just kind of a little bit of a crapshoot by taking a look at the obvious spots.
Yeah.
When you PPI a car, how do you go about inspecting for this without removing the entire subframe?
You got to kind of shove your head up there with a flashlight and really try and get the right angle to see like this crack. Most of the times they'll crack here, which is relatively easy to see through the sway bar bracket. Typically, if you don't have a crack here, you won't have much damage
Right.
under here.
So the reinforcement, what is that kit actually doing? What are we going to be changing on here?
So you're going to be strengthening these sections here and here. So you're adding metal, you're welding up to spots where you'll get cracks, and then we'll also be repairing the broken spot welds. And if there is a crack here, I'm actually going to take some of the undercoating off here and check to make sure there's a crack, if there is a crack or not there. On the top side, you actually weld holes, or you cut holes in the floor, and you actually weld on top of these studs here to strengthen them to the body more.
And because you're going to be welding, it's a really good idea to remove the gas tank. So if you are handing this car over to a shop, if you want to be courteous, don't give the car to them with a full tank. It makes it a lot easier to remove a gas tank when it's empty. Prep all the surfaces on the car and on the brackets by grinding them nice and clean.
So here's your mill scale, and this is your nice fresh metal that what you want to weld on.
So we just got to weld up this little guy.
I hit it with Silver Streak. It's a special welding marker. It'll actually brighten up as I'm welding.
Then you can start repairing any existing cracks by welding them closed.
Small crack here, it's very difficult to see.
Falls right along the radius of the bolt. This is actually hidden underneath the stud that holds the subframe up.
Right, yeah.
They're tricky.
With the brackets ready, we can mount them up.
Lug studs have two purposes. They hold in your wheels, and they're also great
Oh, clever.
for centering your reinforcement plates.
Who knew?
Same pitch.
That's
Throw
great.
them in, and it centers the hole right up.
And then you're just going to go ahead and weld those in.
Yes.
After the brackets are all welded up, you're going to want to use a rust preventative coating to protect them. Don't be shy about painting this on. You want to make sure that this is protected for the rest of the car's life.
Everybody's gonna judge me on my painting techniques.
So it's also important that you let it dry and put on a second coat. While it's drying, we can jump into the trunk because we're not done yet.
So one of the easier areas to look to see if you have a bad subframe is back here. You'll end up popping the spot welds underneath this undercoating, and the undercoating will crack right here. It'll make a profile of 2 sheets of metal that will crack, and also you'll see the pop spot welds along this section.
How's this one look?
These ones are perfect. As we saw from underneath, the underneath is the 100% telltale of what's going on with the car. But as you can see, there's nothing, no popped up, nothing. You don't see any sheet metal popping up at all. And yeah, this looks excellent.
So where do we reinforce here?
So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna cut a small window right here on both sides, take that piece out, and I'm gonna grind and weld in a couple of areas. So I can get better access to the material down here. What I'll do is I'm going to take my finger sander, clean up all the paint on these welds here, here, and here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a stitch from here to here and across. So effectively connecting all three of these welds together by some warm material, and that will strengthen the top of the mount for the subframe. It's a tube with 2 plates on either side of it. And that's the top plate, so I'm welding the top plate onto the sheet metal to give it more rigidity.
So basically you're just trying to soup it up and make sure that it's all connected.
Yeah, you're just trying to connect it all together.
With the final reinforcing welds in the trunk completed, we can prep the surfaces to weld on the final plates. Paint on 2 coats of your rust-preventing coating, and you can start putting this car back together. But let's take a look at 2 floors that were completely removed because they were so far gone.
The major subframe failures we see are usually the results of an accident that wasn't correctly repaired. What happens is these cars will be in a small rear-end collision, and the spot welds will break like a zipper running down the frame rails. You drive a car and the noise gets slightly worse over time, you don't really hear it. And then people drive their cars here and the whole rear of the floor is flexing up and down an inch.
These are some of the worst examples we've seen of the cracking, where they spider all the way up here, and even the spring perches have started to separate. You have bad cracked spot welds and cracks running to them, crack running across here. It actually also breaks this weld on the back of the floor here and starts breaking the spot welds along here. Run another broken spot weld here, and I think this one even broke the spot welds along the spare wheel well.
And this car was being driven by a new owner. He had no idea that this had happened. He thought he had a broken spring. That was his diagnosis from another shop. This was a 40-hour repair to buy an OE replacement floor, drill out every single spot weld, get this into place, aligned, re-weld all the spot welds, stitch it. But both of these were caused by, I think, a rear-end collision. The one at Evans Feed is
by far the worst one we've had, and this isn't even attached.
Again, this car went to a shop to have coilovers installed, and the shop put it up in the air and watched the floor fall out of the car.
Thank you so much to Wile Motorsport for opening their doors for me to film this DIY. I hope this helps you figure out how to protect your E46. Thanks so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive.